Have you ever felt a moment of conflict with your son or your father and wondered why a relationship so rooted in love can also feel so challenging? Why in some moments words hurt more deeply, misunderstandings seem to repeat, or a sense of closeness feels like both a gift and a weight? Yogananda offered a spiritual lens through which we can begin to understand this, suggesting that the relationship between father and son is never random. It is born from karma, from a soul choice, from a sacred agreement made long before birth. You didn't just become a father or a son by chance. Something deeper was in motion. A soul-level plan was unfolding. When we see this bond not only as emotional or biological, but as karmic and spiritual, everything begins to change. That friction you feel, it may not be a failure. It may be exactly what your souls agreed to face together. In yoga's teachings, the soul chooses its family not from logic, but from vibration, from a pull of unfinished energy, old lessons, and deep desires. A son may choose a father, not because he is perfect, but because his presence stirs something that needs to be healed. The father, too, receives a child whose presence touches places he has long forgotten, both wounds and strengths. So when we talk about a hidden contract, we're speaking of this. Your souls once stood in a higher realm and said, "Let's meet again. Let's try to grow together, even if it's hard." In this light, what once felt like personal failure can begin to feel like a sacred purpose. The pain has meaning. The challenges are messages. And slowly, a deeper harmony can emerge. But here's the part many miss. Soul contracts are not always peaceful. They're often intense because the soul isn't seeking comfort. It's seeking growth. And that growth rarely comes without being stretched. As a son, you may have inherited your father's fears, his silence, or his anxieties. Not just through nurture, but through karma. And as a father, you may find your son triggering parts of you that you thought you had buried long ago. This is not punishment. It's reflection. It's the universe holding up a mirror so that what is hidden can finally be seen. What if your child is showing you your own unhealed story? And what if your father, in all his imperfections, was holding the pain of a past he couldn't yet name? When we approach these moments with compassion instead of blame, Yogananda taught that negative emotions between souls create a binding energy. If a father carries resentment toward his own father, that energy doesn't just disappear. It often flows into the next relationship, where the son begins to echo the same patterns. This is not fate. It is an opportunity, a karmic thread asking to be untangled, not tightened. Every moment of conflict is a chance not to win, but to transform. The son can learn to forgive what he never caused. The father can learn to comfort the part of himself that once felt unseen. Together, they can release what neither of them created, but both of them carry. There's a reason why father-son relationships are often so emotionally charged. The bond is ancient. You've likely known each other before. In one life, the son may have been the father. In another, they may have walked as brothers or even rivals. Karma brings souls back into each other's orbit until peace is made. But this peace doesn't come from pretending. It comes from facing the echoes that arise and choosing to respond differently. Your reactions matter. Each time you choose to pause instead of lash out, to soften instead of harden, you're changing the vibration of that karmic bond. Slowly, gently, the thread begins to loosen. a path to healing. But what about the moments when it feels impossible? When the gap is too wide, the wounds too deep, and the past too heavy? Yogananda spoke often about the power of grace. That beyond karma, beyond cause and effect, lies the loving presence of the divine. And in the father-son bond, this divine energy can flow if invited through prayer, devotion, or even a single, sincere breath. You can open the door to help beyond what the mind can understand. It's not about being perfect. It's about being willing to bring light where there's been silence, willing to see not just the person, but the soul. One of the most beautiful practices Yogananda gave is the peace and harmony prayer. It's so simple, yet so profound. If there is tension between you and your father or son, you can close your eyes, breathe slowly, and visualize them surrounded in golden light. Then, mentally repeat, Lord, fill him with peace and harmony, peace and harmony, peace and harmony for a full minute. Then, see yourself in that same light and repeat, Lord, fill me with peace and harmony. This humble practice begins to dissolve energetic walls. It doesn't force change. It invites it gently, quietly, like the sun warming a frozen field. When this is done consistently, even the hardest hearts begin to soften. Not always overnight, but energy shifts. Conversations begin to change. A look becomes softer, a word less sharp. The karmic wheel starts to turn in a new direction, not through force, but through intention. You may still face misunderstandings, but you'll face them from a different, quieter place. And from that place, true forgiveness can emerge, not just for them. Yogananda said that forgiveness is more powerful than revenge. And in father-son healing, this truth becomes sacred. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it never hurt. It means choosing love over resentment. It means remembering that both of you are still learning, still growing, still unraveling stories that began long before this life. When you forgive, you interrupt the old story. You stop it from continuing, and you open a space for something new to be written, something kinder, something freer. You are not alone in this. Many men carry the weight of unspoken pain between generations. But here is the hope. You don't have to carry all of it. You just have to begin. One breath at a time, one prayer at a time. Even sitting in silence and wishing peace for your father or son begins the healing, because even if the other person never changes, you are changing. Your energy is clearing. Your soul is growing. And sometimes the most powerful healing is quiet. It happens not in big apologies or dramatic moments, but in the small inner shifts. The moment you choose patience instead of sarcasm. The time you listen instead of correcting. The time you offer a soft word where once you would have turned away. These are the seeds of new karma. These are the beginnings of peace, and they matter more than you know. Eventually, the friction that once felt unbearable begins to soften. You start to see the child or the father not as a burden, but as a partner on your path. You remember that behind the roles and the wounds, there is love. A love so old, so enduring that it chose to come again, to try again, to heal again. And in this recognition, you begin to reclaim your power, not the power to control, but the power to love wisely, to forgive freely, to walk forward with compassion. Here's the deeper truth. Every step you take toward healing this bond doesn't just bless you. It blesses your lineage. The children who come after you, the patterns they won't have to carry, the peace they'll inherit. When one soul chooses to end the cycle, the whole family begins to breathe again. This is how generational healing begins, not in grand gestures, but in quiet, sacred choices. So, if you've struggled in this bond, know this: you are not failing. You are awakening. The soul contract between father and son is not about perfection. It's about evolution, about learning to see one another beyond the surface, about recognizing the divine mirror in each other. And when you do, the bond transforms. In the end, behind every sharp word, every misunderstanding, every painful silence, there is still love. And that love is waiting to be remembered, to be seen again, not through hurt, but through grace. Because your son is not just your child. Your father is not just your parent. You are each other's teachers, mirrors, and perhaps most sacred of all, each other's healing. What do you think of this spiritual perspective on your family relationships?